on that note, if we can encourage people to
Yes,
subscribe and share this content,
share.
certainly
Yes.
YouTube is not going to promote the kind of things we talk about. That's for
No.
sure.
No.
So we've already found out the hard way. There's code words that I'm not going to bother learning them, but there's things you can say and things you can't say.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to rely on, hopefully, people helping us along in this process. And that would be you guys, our loyal listeners. So we have
Apparently we are live. I'm just trying to turn my volume down here.
We have kind of a strange topic today. So we were talking this week about what we were going to do for the show, and the whole new tax plan that they've come up with that is sold to us as a tax the rich type of thing, which, by the way, sounds great to me because I'm not rich, right?
Sure.
So if you want to tax everyone else, that's fine. And we are called to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, right? So we kind of have to do that. But then the question becomes, who's rich and who's not rich, right? So I've been perusing the numbers, and they take a shockingly deep dive into the population with some of the things they want to do. So unpack kind of what you found during the week.
Well, let's start from the very beginning. Joe Biden came out with his Build Back Better Act, and it was this huge $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill.
Yeah, that's the bigger of the two. One's infrastructure, one's
no. It's a 2,465-page document of where they wanted to put everything in together.
Well,
half of it is what you're talking about, infrastructure, but the other half.
Oh, I thought they were two different bills.
No, the Republican. Okay, both parties got together and put together an infrastructure bill. But
I like the infrastructure bill if we can figure out how to pay for it.
Right.
And for the record, I don't mind taxing the rich.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that for a second. I understand what you're talking about, but unfortunately, we're the ones that have to pay for it. Because when you start taxing the rich and the companies and everything like that,
it just trickles down to everybody else.
It passes down to us. We're already starting to see that right now.
Are we at the sweet spot, or can we get to a sweet spot where we can absorb it without fundamentally changing our standard of living to pay for these things?
No. But going back to what they wanted to do, they wanted to put it all into one bill. They like I said, the both sides of the parties got together and said, hey, we need an infrastructure bill, and it was a smaller bill, and they were trying to get it passed through, and then all of a sudden the elite said, well, we're going to roll it into this bigger bill. Well, what it first reminded me of when they told me it was 2,465 pages, it reminded me of what we had with the Obamacare thing. We don't know what's in it until after we pass it. I love those type of things like that. Like one of the things that they have in this big Build Back Better bill is $3 billion for tree planting and tree equity. Okay? Think about that for a second. Trees have now become racist.
All right.
Okay?
So
okay, wait. It also had $25 million in there for anti-discrimination training for health sectors. So in other words, all you health people out there are racist, because we've got to get into this anti-discrimination training for them. Like, really? And then wait. It gets even better. I love this last one. I love this one. This one is one of my favorites. And this is $15 million for resource centers for older people with sexual orientation or gender identity issues. $15 million for
15 million
for resource centers for older people with sexual orientation or gender identification issues.
What would a resource center be? Any ideas? Like a nursing home?
I don't know. I'd have to go and read a little bit more.
Here's the crazy thing. And when I listen to these numbers, and I'm not a millionaire, but when I listen to these numbers and you say 25 million, I say pocket change. Big deal. When we're talking about billions and trillions, 25 million, nothing.
Okay, but wait. When we start to add all these together, we start to get into there was $3 billion for the tree equity thing. $3 billion. So now
I'm for planting trees, but what's tree equity?
Yeah. Well, what they were saying, the American Forest defines tree equity as identifying the cities that can gain the most significant health, economic, and climate benefits by increasing tree canopy in places of high need. So, in other words,
inner cities get
get trees now
from the federal government.
From the federal government, because we have to make sure that they have as many trees as the suburbs have, because it's a racist thing. It's an equity thing. Here we go again. Trees are now a part of the equality.
Well, yeah.
thing,
I mean, it's
dumb.
Anyway. It's dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb.
So
but
go ahead.
Here's where we're going. The plan proposed almost $80 billion in mandatory spending for IRS, according to Politico, basically doubling the workforce with a proposed 87,000 new workers over the next decade. And then also they want to look into your bank account. Now, when this first started, it was if you had $600 or more. Now they've kind of backed off of it.
Was it a balance or a transaction of?
It was both.
$600 would trigger an alert to the IRS.
Trigger an alert to the IRS so that they could look at what you're doing.
So here's a couple of things now. So if we're going to tax the rich, the 1% of America, do we need to double the IRS workforce to tax 1% of the population? In other words, if they're not coming after everyone for more taxes, why do we need to double the size of our IRS staff?
Let me say something. I have said this over and over and over again. The government will not come at you head on. They will come at you through an IRS audit.
Yeah.
And see, here's a problem that we run into. When you say we're going to tax the rich, let's get realistic here. Rich people go out and hire accountants so that they can get through every single loophole that's out there.
Right.
So when you say we're going to tax them,
not really.
Not really, because you haven't changed the tax laws.
Are they going to close the loopholes? In other words, are they going to slap the faces of the people that fund their political careers?
Exactly.
In other words, if I'm a millionaire, and I contribute to your campaign, or a billionaire, and you better be careful how you vote.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if I'm a billionaire, I'm concerned about my money. I got my mind on my money and my money on my mind, bro.
Yeah, but see, the thing that we're going to continuously say is that they can afford to hire the attorneys, the tax attorneys, that will keep them from paying more money to the IRS. But the problem that we run into is if they're going to start looking at when you spend $600 or when you spend this or you spend that on this or that, your retirement, all these other things that they're wanting to get into, they're going to say, oh, look, Kevin, you didn't pay your taxes on this transaction here, so we want our money now. And Kevin, who cannot afford to hire a tax attorney, will end up paying it or going to jail or having his stuff, frozen or all these other different things like that. So it's
all right. So so they're only going to go after really, really rich people, but they need another $90 billion in staff. They need to essentially double this.
80 billion.
So they need to almost double the number of staff they have for audits of that 1% or 1.1%. I think it comes out to over 500,000 a year.
If you believe that, I've got some swampland.
Yeah. So right away, using my God-given gifts of discernment or my human agency, as the secular world would call it, that doesn't make sense to me. And anything, by the way, that makes the federal government bigger and more powerful doesn't make sense to me. No. So I think we should be moving in the other direction. And then years ago when I was a contractor, if somebody paid me $600, which was pretty much everybody, or I paid somebody $600, which was pretty much everybody, I had to 1099 them. I had to account for that money, or they had to account for that money once I sent them a 1099. Right. So what you're talking about is not new, except that it's new. It's new to individuals. It's new to people, not to businesses.
No. This is new because they've never had access to your checking account.
Right. Well, that we know of.
True. Well, listen. Let's be realistic about it.
Are we going to trust a bank? I wouldn't trust them any more than I trust the government.
I don't either. But think about it just for 1 second. If it came out that the bank had been allowing the government to look at your accounts over the past
people would leave that bank,
people would flee from that bank. It would be worse than the Depression where people wanted their money out immediately.
I closed a bunch of Bank of America accounts when they were stacking. Remember, they were stacking transactions?
Yep.
And so I would have money hit my account, and then I would make purchases for the business all day, and then I'd get hit with a bunch of fees. I'm like, what's the fees for? Well, they credited the deposit at the end of the day, and all the charges at the beginning of the day. So they can collect, $150 in fees because they just stacked them in a certain order. They did it once. They put it all back. They got caught. Remember, Bank of America was in the news. Then they did it again. So I just pulled my money and went somewhere else.
Well, okay, I'm gonna put on a Kevin hat here, and I'm gonna be a conspiracy theorist. When I first saw the amount of $600, you know what I'm thinking.
Yes. What costs $600?
What costs
consistently
$600?
costs about $600.
Yeah, a firearm.
Guns, yeah.
So
the guns that we can afford.
Yeah, true. So if I'm spending $600 to a company or to an individual or something like that happens to be a weapon of some sort, the IRS now is going to have that information. So guess what? We don't have to get rid of the sales to each other, because they want to outlaw that. They want to make it to where in order for you to sell me a gun, you have to have a record check and all these other things like that. Well, now they're going to keep track of who's selling who what. And so if it ends up being a firearm, because they want to know what this transaction is, they're going to want to know. And say, for instance, you buy a gun from your local pawn shop. Okay, let's just say your local pawn shop.
Right.
Now, you have to do a criminal history check when you do that. So they already know it anyway. There's paperwork that's in there. But say, for instance, you buy it from somebody else. They're going to start digging in there and find out what's going on. Now, ammunition is not checked. I mean, as far as I know, let me just say it this way. As far as I know, ammunition is not checked. In the old days, when you used to go to Walmart and want to buy ammunition, you had to fill out a piece of paper and you had to show them a driver's license that said you lived in the state. Now, this is the old days.
Really?
Yeah, they got rid of that because I know that because I had bought some .45 ammunition and we had a murder that a .45 was used, and the captain of homicide, who everybody feared, came to the roll call and said, Howard, if you were going to kill somebody, what type of .45 round would you use? And I about freaked out because I knew where he knew that.
Oh.
I'd never met this guy before, but yet he's sitting in a roll call and he looks at me specifically and goes, what type of .45 would you use?
Is that Florida, Virginia?
That was Virginia.
So so they tell us they're going to tax the rich, but they want our information. So right away, you've got to be a little concerned. Here's the other thing. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, and Ron Cerniglio, I hope I'm saying that right, Cerniglio, brought up that they will. My fear would be if we overtax corporations particularly or affluent people, then they'll set up outside of the United States,
sure
outside of our jurisdiction.
Sure they will.
So then there'll be no money coming in. So as much as we can hate big pharma and big corporations and the banks and stuff like that, they are integral. They're an important part of our economic engine. They create jobs.
Sure.
So everybody complains about Amazon not paying taxes, but then we give billions of dollars in incentives for Amazon to put a business in Ottumwa, Iowa, or whatever. And
well, here
they're gonna take advantage of that.
Sure.
At tax time.
Sure.
So
sure.
While they might have owed $1 billion tax, they're holding $1 billion worth of tax credits, and it's a wash.
This is a rouge. This is nothing more than just smoke and mirrors here, folks. Let's be realistic about it. If you come to me and tell me that you're going to now start taxing corporations 27 to 28%, guess what's going to happen? They're going to leave this country. They're going to head someplace else. Guess what that does to us? That takes away jobs. This is nothing more than them wanting you to depend upon the government for everything that you have out here. I am sorry. I'm kind of like sick and tired of this right now.
Well,
hiring 87,000 new workers for the IRS is nothing more than a police force, because they can enforce laws, they can put you in jail, they can put a lien on your property, they can do anything they want to. They can deny you a 501c3 status. We talked about it in one of our other True Christian talks about how Christians engaged under the Biden administration had been denied because they were a Christian organization, and Christian organizations relate to the Republican Party. It was denied. It's in the letter. We talked about it. We posted the letter online so people could see this. this is scary here. This is just flat out frightening to me, and I'm wondering who's paying attention, because it's just like they said in the Obama stuff. If we can pass this without reading it, they don't want you to read it. They do not want you to read it. But yet they've already been found out. We have smart people out here that have said, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. And then all of a sudden we start to hear what's in there. And like I said, tree equity is still getting me every day. I mean, that cracks me up, you know. I will never be able to look at a tree the same way again.
Well, they ruined it for me with the equity part. So I would love to plant more trees.
Sure, I would too.
If we could afford it, with
yeah.
some kind of surplus.
Yeah.
I wouldn't borrow money to plant trees necessarily, but they just have to put their bizarre little
twist to it.
They got to pander to the little niche that helps get them reelected every 4 years or 6 years.
Yeah,
whatever.
you know, I'm sorry, $15 million for resource centers for older people. Now, my question is, what is older people? Is that above 30? I mean, what is older people with sexual orientation or gender identity issues? What the heck does that mean? Tell me what that means. You know, I don't know. Did you see the news?
Are there needs not being met by the same people that are meeting the needs of the middle-aged?
I don't know.
Gender confused people?
I don't know. But I don't know if you saw.
They just make this stuff up. One
It
guy
is.
during the Democratic debates this last national election cycle, the guy from the Spanish guy, the Cuban guy, I forget his name, but he said he's not just he's not just for reproductive rights. He's for reproductive justice, which includes free abortions for transgender people, and the crowd went nuts.
Yeah.
So which group of transgender people are going to need free abortions? The men becoming women or the women becoming men? But to them, it sounded awesome.
Okay, they've started saying that you have to take the male. I mean, you have to take the gender preference out of pregnancy. You have to take the gender preferences out of pregnancy altogether. It is now them that get pregnant. It is that them that have an abortion.
So this is this then for.
We've lost touch
is
with
this
reality.
just part of the runaway train, this tax thing?
Yeah.
And for Christians now, if they're going to go after you and me for our $10,000, which I don't have in the bank.
But hold on. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because if you make any purchase at all that you borrow money from a bank, say
buy
a car,
or motorcycle or something.
$10,000 for a car is a cheap car.
Yeah.
So any type of transaction that you do where $10,000 is involved in it, they're going to have their finger inside your banking account looking at what you spend your money on. And if they can tax you somehow, that's what they're going to be looking at.
So if they're willing to do that, if they're willing to go after you and me, why would they not be willing to go after, and how palatable, how attractive it would be to their voting base to go after affluent churches? Some of these churches make millions of dollars.
Sure.
You know, some ministries make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And they spend it all to nonprofit.
Sure.
But they're driving around and they got G4 private jets and everything else. And so they're not exactly me.
but once again, I'm going to throw this out there. They have the money to hire the best tax accountant attorneys to make sure that they're covered.
Well, we're going to segue into a strange thing that we were talking about earlier in Virginia. Here's my point. If I am, as a pastor, not allowed to tell people who to vote for, essentially what it comes down to.
Right.
I can't endorse a candidate from the pulpit, basically, right?
Right.
Or I would pierce that corporate veil of 501(c)(3),
right?
That corporate protection, the tax-exempt. Our friend, you voted for Biden, so I'm guessing you're a Kamala Harris fan too.
Oh, our friendship is about to end here, you know.
So,
wow, those are fighting words.
She made a video that they're going to play in churches in Virginia.
Oh no, they've already started playing it.
Yeah. That that's Kamala Harris telling the congregation to vote for Terry McAuliffe.
Yes.
So they don't lose that key Democrat governor in a key place like Virginia.
Yep.
So if those churches play that, first of all, are they compelled to play it? And if they do, have they endorsed a candidate from the pulpit?
Is it a violation of law approved by Congress in 1954 that prohibits 501c3 organizations engaged in any political campaign activity? Even the Secular Coalition for America. You remember that group? That group that had put that letter to Biden about how Christians were white race nationalists?
That was Democratic Socialists, wasn't it?
It was the Secular Coalition for America.
Okay.
Okay. And so
to protect us from religious people.
Yeah. They represent the interests of atheists, humanists, free thinkers, agnostics, and non-theistics Americans. Even they slammed the ad.
Yeah.
Even they said she shouldn't be doing this.
So that is crossing a line. Does it set a precedent now? So since she can cross the line, and there be legal precedent for doing so, now can everyone cross that line?
Do you have the money for the attorney that's going to be required in this?
Heck no.
You would hope that you would get somebody like Jay Sekulow or somebody like that to step in and
that would be
represent
nice.
you. Yeah, that
Johnny
would be
Cochran. He passed away, but it'd be nice to have Johnny Cochran.
You would hope that. No, I'll go with Jay Sekulow.
Yeah. Well, I would like to have some high-powered, high-profile attorney to protect me, but I wouldn't because I couldn't afford.
We couldn't afford it.
And by the way, I happen to think that your pastor shouldn't be endorsing a particular political candidate. You can hold to policy specifications. In other words, you could be pro-life and you can be all sorts of things, which would indicate one party over the other, I'm sure. But should your pastor or the Pope or anybody be endorsing a single candidate, right?
Well, but and let's go to what you just said right there. Let's talk about this for a second. This shows you how the Democratic Party, let's just be realistic here, how the Democratic Party says, do what I say, but not as I do.
Oh, clearly.
I mean,
if we learned anything in COVID is that they mean these things are for us, not them.
Yeah. I mean,
not Democrats, politicians in general.
You know,
think they're too good for somehow intellectually more evolved than we are.
Listen, we have come to it is us and them in this country, and I hate to say it that way because you have corrupted me.
Yeah,
you've corrupted me.
You've become cynical.
I have become cynical. I was looking for that ray of hope that we always thought.
Well, you lay down with dogs, you're going to get fleas, Jim. You hang around with me, you're going to start to get. Oh, you know what I'm doing?
What are you doing?
I'm commenting on YouTube from the wrong account.
Uh-oh. Now you're in trouble. Because you're.
No, I pimped my other podcast.
Oh.
So,
well, that's a Christian podcast, so now they're going to come after your 501c3 status. Because,
I don't have any of those, though.
All right, hang on. I got to plug in here, so keep talking.
I'd rather pay taxes than be told what to do, I think. So as Christians, how should we approach taxes in general? Well, clearly, Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, but render unto God that which is God's, right?
Right.
So our greatest, highest single calling is to Christ, right? To God the Father through the work of the cross. Now, here's my problem with Christians and Christianity, and in America in general. We have gotten to the point where our charity, we think, is going to be done by the government. In other words, we take a portion of our pay, we send it to the government. Sure. They now provide for our neighbors and our families and everything else. We've broken we've gotten the chain of support for our communities and our families backwards. So it used to be, biblically speaking, it used to be the family took care of the family.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And then the church took care of the church.
Yep.
And then the community took care of the community,
right?
And so on in concentric circles. But the focus being on family and church, right? And community.
Right.
So, but they've made it super convenient, and we become a church of convenience in a lot of ways. They made it super convenient for everybody. So I pay my taxes. I pay for programs to support people that are struggling. Therefore, I shouldn't have to support people that are struggling. It creates for us as Christians kind of the wrong outlook for what we do or why we do it. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So
Well, there's more to that. Let's unpack that for a second, because that's an excellent point, okay? We as the church used to be the one that did all of the social or the outreach to our neighborhoods and to our homeless and to all these things like this. That gives you a lot of power. That gives you a lot of power. I mean, seriously,
Gives the church a lot of power.
It gives the church a lot of power, because if you're providing food for the hungry and shelter for the homeless, they're going to vote the way that you vote.
You encourage them to vote.
So now, if the government takes the money from the churches and said, "Hey, we can handle this better than you can,"
it also takes the power from the church.
It takes the power from the church.
That's interesting. I didn't think of that way. I usually think of these things. That's an interesting.
I'm sorry, you've made me this person now, of where I'm cynical and not,
Well, that's a good point. So I think the government has made every effort to move the church out of our lives, every effort to move the nuclear family out of our lives, right? The guy in Virginia, the McAuliffe guy running for governor, says that parents don't really have any say in how their kids are educated. How creepy is that?
Well, but he also was the guy that talked about the abortions and things and that's kind of something.
Yeah, killing the baby after the abortion.
This is something I'm surprised is not being brought up again, because that was one of his things that he talked about. And
well, people, even conservatives, even Christian conservatives, don't go near that abortion topic very often. Our politicians hardly ever talk about it. It's just a political third rail, right? It's like going after Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. You just don't do it. It would be, even for Christians, for a lot of even for Republicans, would be political suicide. I think or at least they would be political poison. They would be reluctant to even talk about that.
Well, I'm going to say this right now. On Judgment Day, I want God to know that I am definitely against.
Amen.
Pro-life. I'm against it to the nth degree. Now, when people get into the thing about, well, what about rape and all these different things like that, we're talking something completely different. I'm talking about 3 months into it, 4 months into it, you realize that you're pregnant, you have a heartbeat of a child, and you want to get rid of that child. I'm against that. Because I found out something that, the morning after drug, if a person is raped, incest, all these different things like that, most of the time they immediately recommend taking the morning after drug to get rid of it. But they don't talk about that portion of it. They don't say that this is one of the things that they do. Now, if I'm wrong on that, please let us know.
And what percentage of the million abortions a year in America alone is rape and incest?
Right.
And then is anybody ever charged with rape or incest, for that matter, in that case? Or can you just say, I was raped? And
yeah.
So I think we need to hold human life in higher regard than just that. All right, so we're up here at the halfway point. How do we then apply this to the flock? What should Christians know, and how should they use that information to negotiate this stuff?
Well, first off, I would contact, and you know what we need to do? This is something you and I need to do. We need to get emails for all of our representatives in this state. We need to. This is something I can reach out. I can start working on this.
And we could put it in the comments. I've already emailed everybody.
Yeah.
More than once.
Well, that's what we need to do, because we need people to email their representatives and say, we are so against this, and if you vote for it, we will remember this.
Yeah.
It's time that we start holding to task those that vote on some of these things that really are going to hurt us. We're hurting now. I want to go back to the IRS for just 1 minute. You and I both talked about the FISA warrants, the courts, going out here gathering information on all these people.
Which was part of the Patriot Act.
Yeah. Okay. How has that been turned against us? I mean, we were hesitant in the beginning, but a lot of us said, hey, listen, if it protects the country, we're for it. We're for it,
Yeah.
If they're listening to terrorists, we're for it. But what did they do? They used it against a sitting president.
Well, a guy running for president.
Well, he was running for it, and then when he got into office, they still went after him, even after it had been proven wrong.
So there's precedent to believe that our government would misuse every bit of power we've ever given them.
You're going to give them 87,000 new workers, and all they're going to be doing is going after tax violators. Every one of us is going to be a tax violator. Let me throw something else out here real quick. My mom used to, my mother and my stepfather did taxes. And so they would call on a new ruling, and they would get somebody in the IRS, and they would say, hey, what is the definition of this? And so they would tell them the definition of it. They would call the very next day and get a different person and say, hey, what's the definition of this? And get a completely different definition. So your definition of what a tax rule says and their definition of a tax rule could be completely different. And guess who's always going to be right?
Yeah.
They're always going to be right.
That stuff doesn't end in a tie.
No, it does not. I remember one time Wendy came to me and said, hey, we're going to owe the IRS some money this year. And I looked at her and said, we never owe the IRS any money. We never owe them. I would rather give them too much during the year than at the end of the year go, oh, we owe them money. That is just a way that they can take a look at you. Having been audited one time, it's a little scary and a little, frightening when you walk in that door. Fortunately, my mom was on top of it and everything went our way. In fact, the IRS owed me $60, which was kind of cool. But the thing of it is they don't care who you are or what you're doing. They don't care what good work you may be doing. If they think that you're a threat to the political party that's running right now, they're going to use that against you. And I'm sorry, even if a Republican gets into the White House again, 87,000 new IRS employees scare me to death.
I just heard in passing or saw something that talked about a national police force. Your big concern about funding the police was so that they could afford to fund it. Perhaps it's part of this reconciliation thing, which is just, even the name is creepy.
Yeah.
So you can clearly see they're going to spend this money on social justice issues, which, by the way, on a one-on-one basis, a one-by-one basis, I wouldn't mind looking at them. Right, but if you think I am going to trust the people that have been burning down our cities and saying let's defund the police with $3 trillion, you're crazy.
Yeah.
So how should a Christian prepare for a stronger and stronger federal government, a more powerful federal government? Because this would knock it out of the park for the federal government in terms of strength. I think we should turn the power back to the local governments, the states and counties, and let them pay the taxes up to the federal government. Therefore, the federal government is beholden to the state, not the state beholden to the federal government.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So I think that's the way it should go.
Right.
But what do you think? How do you think you and I, me as a Christian father raising a family or running a church, how can I navigate through this kind of new age of America?
Well, when you say navigate, I'm kind of we have to have discernment. We have to understand that, judge. A lot of people will go, well, judge not. You're not supposed to judge. No, that's not what it says.
Yeah.
Understand that if you judge somebody, you're going to be judged under the same criteria, but more if you're doing something you should not be doing. We need to make sure that we try to be as a good citizen as possible. We need to be the best citizen of this country as possible. But we also need to understand that this bill that they want to pass is not only going to hurt us, it's going to hurt lower income, which what is going to happen? You're going to see a spike in crime. You're going to see a spike in all sorts of bad things that we do not want to see, because it's that trickle down effect. And who was it that did the broken window syndrome? Talked about the broken windows. If you have a business that has broken windows and you do not repair this, then you start to have more and more and more, and then you start to have more and more crime. So you correct these things. This is headed down. Gosh, I can't. When I read, I could care less about the social equity in trees. I could care less about that. I really could. But this right here is one of the scariest things that I have ever seen in my lifetime.
What do you think the obsession is with having people live in the city anyway? I mean, we seem to, is it just because they're democratically run our biggest cities, or is it because they want everybody in the same place at the same time?
No, it goes back to the 60s when they came out and said, listen, you don't have to be married to get money from the government. Look, I used to look at the projects, and you would see generation after generation after generation living in the projects because the federal government kept them there. They kept them in. They were the ones that were doing the slavery. If I guarantee you $1,000 a month, and this is back in the 70s, which $1,000 a month was a lot of money.
Yeah.
If I guarantee you $1,000 a month, if you stay unwed and have children, and every child you have, I'm going to add another one to it, what are you going to do? We put these people in slavery. We really did.
So we set them up for failure.
We set them up for failure.
And that is, and so then, big picture, are they trying to get now? Are they trying to get everyone else
Sure they are.
beholden to the government, so that they can then control?
Look at what is going on.
They can not lose an election for 100 years.
Yeah,
basically.
that's what they're working for. That's what they're working toward. Think about it. 87,000 new employees under the IRS. Whatever administration is in power right there, you would go after those that were against you. You would not allow 501c3s that said, conservative words in it, any type of conservative words to get that. You would not let people fundraise. If you did donate money, let's say that you donated $10,000 to a challenger of this administration right now, guess what they're going to do? They're going to want to know where that $10,000 came from and were you taxed properly on it. And if not, we're going to go against you. We're going to look at your records with a fine-tooth comb. Why do you think they wanted to get Trump's IRS records? Trump used every legal thing that the Obama administration had put into play for his taxes, but they wanted it as a diversion. If I can discredit you and say that you're not paying your fair share of taxes and you're a tax evader and gosh, Kevin is one of the worst people in the whole wide world, guess what happens? You lose your power. You lose your influence.
Right.
This stuff that we're doing right now, why do you think they shut us down on our Facebook page? Because we have influence. And they don't want guys like you and I to start little small pockets of resistance. And I'm not talking about violent resistance. I'm just talking about people who are starting to think now.
Intellectual resistance.
Intellectual. Now they're paying attention and they go, oh my gosh, you're talking about $80 billion in mandatory spending for the IRS and doubling the workforce that, what? No.
And the decentralization of media, I think, has really rattled them. So I have friends that I spend a lot of time on YouTube. I learn a lot on YouTube. Not everything on YouTube is the conspiracy.
You need to be careful.
Who's the guy? I always forget his name. Who's held up as the most conspiratorial? He was just banned from everything. InfoWars guy.
InfoWars. Okay. Yeah.
Not everything on YouTube is InfoWars. I mean, you can get college lectures and sermons and all sorts. There's all sorts of good information on YouTube, but it decentralized the power from. So now I'm more likely to believe somebody I never heard of before on YouTube than I am to believe Anderson Cooper on CNN.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, people on Fox. So.
Well, but okay.
I think that is part of the threat. So they have to marginalize and objectify the Ben Shapiro's and Tim Pools of the world. And I like him. Yeah. And the guy I don't agree with an awful lot, but I like Joe Rogan.
Alex Jones is
Alex Jones.
Yeah.
I've only really listened to him one time, and he was crazy.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if you ask me, he's crazy.
Sure. But here's the thing that you need to think about. When the whistleblower from Facebook, and have you noticed she's died out of the news.
Really?
We're not talking about her anymore. She came out and wanted to talk about how bad Facebook was. That she had gathered all these documents and she had access to, and now she'd only worked there for like 4 or 5 months.
At this point, who wouldn't believe that? In other words, how could you look at what's going on in social media and think everything's cool?
But
right?
that's the point.
That we don't have censorship, or that kind of censorship's okay.
But yet,
who believes that's not a thing?
Who believed that
Who's
they let
left?
her? Yeah, who believed that they let her have all this information? There just was, she came out one day and said, "Hey, I got all this information. I got all these documents on Facebook and all this stuff like this." And the very next day, she's in front of the Senate talking about it. How long would it take you and I if we said, "Hey, you know what? We've got information on, Hunter Biden." Of where he was down here in Florida, it would take you might get on Fox News. You might get there because they love talking about him. You might get on Gutfeld's show because he loves talking about him. But the MSNBC, CNN, all those, you may get on YouTube if you wanted to. But
well, I get I get alerts from everybody during the day, and truthfully, I don't even watch them all. I watch some of them, but I still get alerts from CNN's YouTube channel about Trump.
Yeah.
It's been like a year. How long has it been?
Okay.
It's coming up on a year, right?
Okay. That's a good one. Let's talk about.
So they want to keep the Trump thing alive.
Not only they want to keep,
but they don't even report even once on whistleblowers on Facebook. That should be a red flag for Christians. When we see that, we should be like, why is that?
Yeah.
I mean, even if there's a legitimate reason for it, we should know the reason. You don't need to be a sociologist to have an opinion on sociology. This drives me crazy because nothing stops them from having a theological opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But I'm not allowed to have a sociological or psychological opinion. That's bizarre to me. That should be bizarre to everybody.
Harris going down and using churches to air political ads for Terry, what's his name? McAuliffe, yeah. People should be concerned about that. People should really be concerned about that because what are you doing now? What are you doing now? You're using the church as a political arm of the administration.
They're doing it in African-American churches, though,
It doesn't matter. I don't know.
Well, they can never go after African-American churches. They can come after everybody else, though. I don't think they would ever raise a political hand to an African-American church.
What does that do? What does that do? Once again, you've got division in here now.
Yeah.
Because
they're
you're
dividing us
churches.
even further. And now this time they're dividing the church.
They're dividing the church.
It's already divided.
It is. But look, when we talk what should Christians be doing, my goodness, we need to be paying attention here because the church is on the verge of losing. We're on the verge of, look, they could, I hate being a conspiracy person, but you've started this. If
they're not conspiracy theories when they come true.
When the IRS gets as many people as they want after they stop going after billionaires, which they say they are.
Which they won't.
They're going to go after the churches.
Oh, that's my whole point. I mean,
they're going to go after the churches.
They're going to go after churches and anybody that has a dissenting political view, which would be you and me, by the way.
And David Jeremiah or
John MacArthur.
John MacArthur.
The guy out Jack Hibbs out in California.
All these people that have really said, look, y'all need to wake up because we're losing.
So I think that Christians are somewhat too trusting. In other words, they think to themselves, since COVID, a lot of my people just prefer to go to church on Facebook now, right? Since we set up for them to attend church on Facebook if they're worried about COVID, they've gotten so comfortable, they think this is how they're going to do church forever. But I think it's only a matter of time before churches like mine or churches that preach a true gospel message, soup to nuts gospel message, and all-inclusive, hell and damnation included gospel message are going to be knocked off of Facebook.
Sure they are.
So if I talk about sin or anything like it, Facebook will just shut my church down as fast as they shut me down.
Sin, homosexuality, where you do not believe.
Adultery,
where you do not.
slothfulness, laziness, covetousness.
Child sex.
Yeah. Having sex with kids, pedophilia.
Yeah.
Any of these things, if I denounce any of these things, the folks that think they're going to sit at home a year from now and listen to a true gospel message, they're kidding themselves. They'll switch. If they don't come back to church, they'll switch to a more liberal and then a more liberal and then a more liberal as they begin to shave away anybody that if they're canceling Dave Chappelle right now, don't think they're not going to cancel your church, right? They'll cancel anybody that gets in their way. So the Christians need to now use that God-given gift of discernment to understand these things now, because a year from now or 2 years from now, when you boil a frog in water,
right,
you don't drop a frog in boiling water because he'll hop out.
Right.
You put him in cool water, and then you turn the heat on, and the water warms up slowly but surely, and the frog adjusts and never thinks to jump out of the water till it's too late. This is what's happening. These things happen slowly, then all of a sudden. And this is what's happening. This is what my warning for the American church will be across the board, is things are changing, not for the better. They're changing slowly, and we're getting conditioned to agree with and embrace and tolerate and even celebrate insanity more and more and more and more and more, till eventually it's too late.
I know God has got this in control. I know God has got this in control. But what I'm afraid of, and I know where I'm going, like you said, we've read the end of the book.
We know
where
how
we're
it
going.
ends.
We know how it ends. But what scares me are those that are not paying attention, that do not have a strong Christian walk, that the federal government makes it look like churches are racist or, unless you, and listen, if you're not preaching the gospel, if you're not teaching God's true word, I hate to tell you this, but you're not saved.
No, and I had a staff member say that, talking about my sermon Sunday, that you know there were times where it was a gut punch. She told me, but not, and any time was it not true.
Yeah.
So the gospel should be offensive to sin, and we're all sinners. So we should leave church every week with a little bit of conviction.
Sure.
I mean, I have never been to a church service where I couldn't leave with a resentment if I wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Right? So if you open up God's word waiting to be offended, I'll guarantee you'll be offended. But if you have spiritual eyes and spiritual ears to hear, you can learn and grow from that. And the church, I'm sorry, I love the church, but it doesn't do that anymore. For the most part, it does not do that anymore.
We see it in so many of these different feel-good churches, the prosperity churches. That's the word I was looking for. All the time that you name it, or what is it?
Name it and claim it.
Name it and claim it.
I have people in my church say, "Don't speak that into existence." Like I'm a creative. Like my words are like have some kind of creative capacity. There's a guy, Creflo Dollar, who just did a sermon where, and this is a guy I liked in the beginning of my Christian walk, by the way, 11 years ago. But he said we're made in God's image, therefore we are all gods.
Yeah.
That's dangerous theology.
I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a conference speaking, and there was a company that was speaking before me, and their title was like ground offensive defense or ground objective defense, something like that. And so their acronym was God. And so when they got up, and people would go, and we have God speaking today. And so when I got up afterwards, I said, man, that's a hard act to follow. It's very difficult to follow God. Making a joke about it, because people did. I mean, I would never, there's ground operation delivery or something like that. Really? You can't think of another name? I just don't. That kind of bothers me just a tad.
Christians, I'll tell you about the we're a little off topic. We'll wrap it up
here
in a minute.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you that the modern Christian seeker-sensitive church goes through a lot of trouble to pretend they're not religious, and it drives me crazy. So we have people say things like, "I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious." Well, I'm religious because I adhere and I abide to a particular religion, right?
Yeah.
A particular scripture. So if there's a stigma attached with being religious, attach it to me, because that's what I am, right? I'm Orthodox. I follow Scripture, right? I don't think some of the Scripture needs to be changed and some doesn't. We got to stop letting. Here's a good advice for Christians across the country. We got to stop letting the unchurched world set the definitions for the church world.
Yep.
So if I think that I want an Orthodox pastor.
Yeah.
Right?
I want one that preaches from the Bible.
I want a religious leader, and I want somebody that's not afraid to say Jesus in their sermon, right?
Yeah.
That word upsets even Christians. What spirit do you have in you that if you're upset by the mention of Jesus Christ, but the spirit of the Antichrist, right?
It isn't the Holy Spirit.
That's an opportunity for growth and change. That's not an opportunity to go switch churches to somebody that's less likely to offend you.
We as Christians have to be involved in what is happening right now in this country. We really, truly do. Because if not, we're going to allow, and this boils down to everything, okay? If we're not involved in what's going on, this race that's going on in Virginia, you do not know how important it is as far as schools, abortion, critical race theory, all the things like that this governor is trying to pass. When what's-his-name out in California the recall did not get rid of him, it emboldened him. And he immediately came out firing off with all cylinders. I mean, just came at California and said, we're going to do all these liberal programs, and to heck with you because I'm not listening to you anymore. I mean, that's basically what he did. So if we do not get this governor out of Virginia, who is right there right now, it's just going to embolden them even more.
Yeah, I think the idea of separation of church and state has been flipped around and misused.
Right.
Our Constitution is designed to protect us from the government, not to protect the government from us. And that goes for the church and the individual American. And we need to begin to start thinking in those terms again. If you're waiting, I think we're on the verge of economic collapse right now. There's a conspiracy theory for you. If you think the government's going to take care of you, especially if you are a Christian, this government's not going to. They're not going to be able to take care of you. If they cause the problem, they're certainly not going to be the people to go to solve the problem.
Well, and adding to that, I don't know of a Christian, and I could be corrected. Somebody please send us a message. But I don't know of a Christian who doesn't want to work. I'm sorry. I don't know of a true Christian who does not want to work.
Yeah, Paul talks about it, that he worked, he was a tent maker.
He was a tent maker.
And even though he was busy in evangelizing and had every right to be taken care of in that role, he instead worked and paid his own way through things. You know?
And he also said, if you don't work, you don't eat. You know, people think that that's a secular saying, but he stressed that.
He said specifically, if those who are unwilling to work, let them not eat.
Yes.
And,
okay.
I've upset people with that Bible verse on Facebook, but the truth is, if you are able to work and unwilling to work, then you are not entitled to.
If
food.
you're letting the government pay you to stay home, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
There's something wrong there. You should not be doing that.
And I get it. I mean, I get the idea of wanting more time, and maybe you can do something positive and productive with that time. That's an individual case-by-case basis. But how many people are taking the time to go to the beach, to watch Oprah, to just relax and do nothing productive in that time?
The 60s and 70s, we saw it. It was a virus that came into this world. And the thing is that we have so many people that have seen it, saw what was going on, and broken those chains and got out of it. But yet the government continuously wants to put us back into that. For them to pay as much money as they did over the COVID relief bill.
Are they still paying anywhere?
I don't know. I know that they're not here. So, but we still have a work shortage because people got spoiled by, the government's giving me, $15, $20 an hour, and you're only giving me 10 or whatever the minimum wage is now. You're only giving me minimum wage. That,
I know people that quit career jobs because they didn't want to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that were very happy and very successful with a major corporation that required a vaccine, and they said, no, I'm done. I'll go do something else.
Which is another subject for another day. But we have to be involved. If not, they've gone after our children. They've gone after our schools. They're going after our economy. The next thing they're going to go after is going to be the church, because the church is the last protector,
bastion of truth. Really,
it is. After that,
and it is the source of conservatism, whether you like it or not. Where we were founded as a Christian nation, it's the source of conservatism, and why would they not want to cut the head off what they see as the beast, and that would be to take down the church. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that we're the primary target. We're at the 1 hour mark here, Jim.
All right.
Any parting thoughts? That was an interesting show. I don't know how to make a show about taxes interesting, but I think that was a fairly interesting show. What are your thoughts for everybody as we go our separate ways here?
I am concerned that I'm going to find out what local elections are going on here in November. I'm for sure there might be one or two. There might not be anything going on here in Florida. But next November, I do know that there's going to be some races that are going on that we really need to start paying attention to. Because if we want to protect our children, which is one of the biggest things I think we really need to be focusing on, we have to have school board members that are not pushing the destructive material that they do. We have to watch out for plans like this. I am so thankful that there are people in the government still that looked at this, 5 point whatever trillion it was that they originally started with, and how they were trying to push all this through. And some people stood up and said, no, 3.5 trillion, said, no, we cannot do this. we have to keep those people in there.
Yeah,
There's a thin red line right now protecting us, not the thin blue line. But in government, there's a thin red line that is protecting us. And we have a few that are on the blue side, like Joe Manchin, who stepped up and said, no, I'm not going to vote for this the way it is. Those are people that we need. Look, even though he's a Democrat, I support him because he stood up against this. And we need to be paying attention, because if we don't, like what happened with Obamacare, will be pushed down our throats. And the next thing you know, the rights that we have will start to slip away. And when they start to slip away, we're going to see a changed country. And religion is going to be true religion. Let's make sure that we're kind of clear on that. There's a lot of churches right now that the state loves.
Yeah.
The state loves. I mean, for Kamala Harris to go and get churches to help promote that election, an ad for that election, tells me that those would be the churches that they would protect.
I think for now, I think that they would turn on them when the time comes, when they need to. The left tends to turn on itself.
They turn on each
pretty
other,
easily.
Yeah.
This famously, the snake begins to eat its own tail and then dies. I think I would agree exactly with you, Jim. And my parting thought would be to take local elections more seriously, as the actual church, the body of Christ. We need to be active in politics.
Yes, we do.
I'd say more so in local politics, and we need to even take those, who's going to be the judges in your county, who's going to be on the school board in your county, who's going to be the sheriff. We happen to have a great sheriff right now.
Right.
That's not always going to be the case. He'll be governor and president someday. So we have we need to be plugged in and taking our local elections just as seriously. I would love, by the way, to wake up one day and Christians take their salvation as seriously as Americans take their politics. The passion I see from the secular world about their politics, I would like to see that kind of passion in my Christians. I'll be honest.
I would too. If we can't get them passionate about Christ, let's get them passionate about what's happening in the government, and that'll show them where Christ is in the lead.
I'm going to. I think I'm going to say hello to some folks here on Facebook. All I got is the video now, so maybe I'm not. I want to thank everybody that was watching. Oh, wait, still got it over here.
Ron, Jessica, we really appreciate you out there.
Yeah, thank you for plugging in. Share that in. Share this stuff.
Get your friends to share it and tell them to subscribe. Help us out here.
Come be on the show. I'm getting tired of listening to us.
Yeah.
We got to get some guests in here.
Yeah.
I unplugged our phone line. I got to get that hooked up. How do you like our new studio, by the way? Fancy, right?
It's clean.
It's clean and air-conditioned, and all this stuff is gone. We can see each other now.
Yeah.
We're like a bunch of big shots in here. So come on in and enjoy and check out our new studio.
Wear long
looks
pants,
a lot
I'm
like it's cold in here. That keep you awake.
Sweater on.
And that's it. We love you guys. Thank you for watching the show. As always, subscribe, share this content out there. Anything we can do for you on a personal level, email us at truechristiantalkinfo@gmail.com. You need prayer. You're struggling with chemical or emotional addictions of any kind. Let us know. We have resources to help, and that's kind of really our ultimate goal, is to make a difference in our community. That's it. We'll see you next week, and I don't think we have a topic for next week, but I'm sure the world will furnish us one.
Oh, it always does.
Yeah.
It always does. God bless you. God bless this country.
Yeah, God bless, guys. Bye.